2 wins, 2 Pro Bowlers. That's how the math was mathing for the Silver and Black. We'll get that plus a lot more on Wednesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for December 24th, 2025.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one sports podcast network out there. We're very proud of that fact, very proud of the fact that this show grows each and every day because of your support, Raider Nation, and the great job that my man Ari does behind the scenes, making sure we look good and sound good by way of the YouTube page. So we shout him out. We appreciate him. He does a great job. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, as many of you do, we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line for you, 707-654-4693. We'll close out the show as we normally do, hearing from you, calls, texts, great feedback based off everything we've been talking about throughout the course of the week. Based off the game that happened on Sunday versus the Texans, and a whole lot more as the season gets wound down to the final 2 games. So your thoughts, your calls and texts coming up in segment number 3. Segment number 2, we're going to talk about the pros and cons when it comes to winning the last 2 games. That is very a real possibility for the Raiders, and losing the final 2 games, which is also a real possibility for the Silver and Black, and why there may be a really strong push by head coach Pete Carroll to try to win those games. We'll talk about that coming up in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, news and notes, as we always do, and we'll jump into that after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, and that's PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks apps today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. So on Tuesday, early morning, woke up to the news of Raiders got a couple Pro Bowlers. Now, remember, the Raiders only have 2 wins. And I know the Pro Bowl isn't what it used to be, where guys that made the Pro Bowl, it was one of these, fantastic feats. I know that at some stage of the game, guys will make the Pro Bowl. Guys will be going into the postseason, so they won't be playing. Guys will go to the Super Bowl, they won't play. Guys are injured, and they won't play. There'll be a lot of alternates, and sometimes we'll see guys that are Pro Bowlers that aren't necessarily Pro Bowlers. But to see when the initial roster gets announced, to see the Raiders have 2 guys representing, when a team like the Jacksonville Jaguars, who, oh, by the way, are in first place in their division, only had 1 guy, 1 player from their roster announced as a Pro Bowler, and the Raiders had 2. Again, the Jaguars are in first place. The Raiders only have 2 wins, and they have multiple guys as Pro Bowlers. So on Tuesday, it was announced that both Max Crosby and Brock Bowers are both now Pro Bowlers. Brock Bowers for the second time in 2 seasons in his career, and there's no surprise there with what he was able to do his rookie year that he was a Pro Bowler. This year, obviously, he hasn't had the big numbers that he did just because of missing out on a few games, so he hasn't played in every game like he did last year, but it still shows the respect that he has across the league. It says Bowers earns his 2nd consecutive Pro Bowl selection, picking up where he left off from his rookie year. Despite missing 3 games due to a knee injury, the tight end still leads the Raiders in receptions with 64, receiving yards 680, and receiving touchdowns with 7. With 2 games remaining in the season, he needs 107 yards to surpass Mike Ditka with 1,980 for the most receiving yards by a tight end in his first 2 seasons in NFL history. So nice tip of the cap to Brock Bowers. And again, it shows you the respect that he has around the league already as only a second-year guy. It would be easy to name Brock Bowers a Pro Bowler if he had the great season that he had last year, where he was quarterback proof and he was the only offense that the Raiders had, and he was cooking with grease, right? He was that guy. That was easy to name him a Pro Bowler, but this year, a little bit more difficult. Again, only 680 receiving yards, but he does have the 7 receiving touchdowns, missed 3 games. So nice tip of the cap to him. Max Crosby, 5th consecutive Pro Bowl selection heading into Week 17. The edge rusher ranks 2nd in the league in tackles for loss with 28, trailing only Myles Garrett. He leads the Raiders in sacks with 10, quarterback hits with 20, and is tied for the most pass deflections, 6. The 4th career season with double-digit sack totals. He's racked up at least 20 tackles for loss in 3 of his last 4 seasons. I really like the 6 pass deflections. Remember, before the season started, we talked about how does Max Crosby take his game to the next level. He comes up with those pass deflection. He comes up with those, those JJ swats at the line of scrimmage like JJ used to do, knock the ball down. Comes up with an interception or 2. There was a play early in the season where he had both, right? He knocked the ball into the air and came down with the interception as well. And really was the only offense that the Raiders had in that game, right? It was like that's the only thing that they could really get going is what Max Crosby generated. So we know that he works on his game each and every year and tries to continue to evolve it. This year, it feels like he made more impact plays than what we've seen in the past. Again, something that I know he works on his craft each and every year. He doesn't take very much time in the offseason, gets right back into the lab. Obviously, he was coming off an injury that he had last year, got back at it, and has 10 sacks already so far this season with a couple games left to go. And he's just been that guy, the leader in the clubhouse when it comes to the defensive side of the ball. Still does not have a true running buddy. There's something to be said about that. Myles Garrett, as much as he, has great sack numbers and is such a disruptor for the Cleveland Browns, he's also got a lot of dudes on that Cleveland Browns defensive line that helps him out, that are just as disruptive as he is, and then he ends up being the finisher. Max still doesn't have that guy. He's the one-man band, and for him to have the numbers that he does, again, just shows the respect that the league has for Max Crosby and what he's earned. 5th consecutive Pro Bowl selection. He actually spent some time in the Raiders locker room on Tuesday just talking about how much it meant to him to be recognized by his peers, by the fans, by coaches across the league, and just as one of those guys. And I even asked him about, do you remember, man, you were a 4th round pick. You were a guy that, went into the, into the preseason game in the Oakland Coliseum, broke your hand, ran back into the locker room, got it taped up, and got back on the field. Like, he was concerned about just being on the field and being able to be active and be ready for the team. And now here he is, one of the best edge rushers in the league. So, he got a nice laugh at that and said, hey, I look back at it every once in a while, but don't really take too much time to reflect back because I'm always looking forward at what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. And so tip of the cap again, Max Crosby and Brock Bowers, and this is a 2-win Raider team. Could you imagine if the offense had been what we thought it was going to be, what I thought it was going to be, the strength of the team, if Ashton Jeanty had the phenomenal year that we thought he was going to have as a rookie? And, to be honest, he's over 1,000 yards from scrimmage. He's got 10 total touchdowns. I've said it before. If you go back and just look at his numbers, if you had told me when he was drafted number 6 overall that, hey, man, Ashton Jeanty through 16 weeks and 15 games is going to have over 1,100 yards from scrimmage. He's going to have 10 touchdowns on the season. What do you think the Raiders' record is? I wouldn't have said 2-13. That's for sure. I would have said, oh, man, this dude was, really effective, had a really good rookie year. Obviously, it hasn't panned out that way, but he's still putting in the work. He's still coming to work every day, grinding, doing everything that he can, and still has an opportunity by the time it's all said and done to go over 1,000 yards on the ground. And again, that's not going to give the Raiders ultimately what they want, which is multiple wins. It's what Raider Nation wants, is multiple wins, but still not an awful season from Ashton Jeanty, and still has a nice way has an opportunity to finish it off kind of nice in his rookie year. So he's got a couple more games to finish this thing off strong. I mentioned talking to Max Crosby in the Raiders locker room. He also was asked by my guy Mark Anderson from the AP about, everything that he puts into the game, and then knowing that half the fan base wants the Raiders to lose out so they have an opportunity at that number 1 overall pick. Here's the question and what Max Crosby had to say to that.
Does it really irritate you when you hear talk about the number 1 pick being on the line?
Yeah, I don't give a shit about the pick. Like, to be honest, I don't play for that. That's not my job. My job is to be the best defensive end in the world, and that's what I focus on every day, and being a great leader, and being an influence, and being being that guy on a consistent basis for my team. So, yeah, that's their job. That's, the front office, the coaches, that they do that, but that's got nothing to do with me. I've learned that lesson in the past. I'm not trying to you can't control everything, and that's not my job description. My job is to be the best in the world at what I do, and that's wrecking the game.
I wanted to make sure to bring that to the show just so you can hear from one of the players in the locker room. And he wasn't the only one that was asked about that. Geno Smith was asked about that on Tuesday, said he doesn't care about the draft pick. Michael Mayer was asked about that on Tuesday. And, yeah, hey, he understands why the fans want the Raiders to get the number 1 overall pick, so they have so many different options. And, of course, we'll talk about that coming up in segment number 2. But he doesn't care, right? Devin White, talk to him. He doesn't care. Like, nobody in that locker room cares about the draft pick or tanking, finish off the season with 2 more losses. Nobody cares about that, especially Pete Carroll. He talked about that on Monday as well. But I wanted to make sure that you heard from the leader in the locker room exactly how he cares or doesn't care about that number 1 overall pick and losing. He cares about being the best version of himself and helping his team go out there and win. But there is obviously some big stakes coming up this week against the New York Football Giants. They currently own the number 1 overall pick. The Raiders own the number 2 overall pick. So What happens if the Raiders get the number one overall pick or the Giants do, or the Raiders say they win out the last 2 games, which is a strong possibility. We'll kind of compare and contrast what could be on the line and why it could be very motivating for Pete Carroll to try to make sure the Raiders win these final 2 games. We'll talk about that in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is PrizePicks. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports. You got bowl games on, basketball games, fantastic ones, especially on Christmas, playoff pushes. It's all happening at once. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to do it and make the right call is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. You pick more or less on these 2-player projections. You lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's simple, it's fast, and it's available in 45 states, including Cali, Texas, Florida, and also in Georgia. PrizePicks has added an extra layer of excitement to the holiday sports schedule. You can create a lineup. It takes less than a minute. That makes the whole process really, really smooth. They have the early payout feature. Great bonus. When your lineup starts strong, you may get the option to cash out early. And the new stacks feature lets you choose the same player up to 3 times in one lineup, like more on a QB's passing yards, touchdowns, and rushing yards. Right now, download the PrizePicks apps today. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Raiders lose out versus Raiders win out. Both options are on the table. Most of Raider Nation wants to see the Raiders lose the final 2 games, both to the Giants and the Chiefs, ensure that they get the number 1 overall pick and have the opportunity to go get their quarterback. And that, is a great scenario for the franchise, right? I'm not saying for those players. I'm not saying for head coach Pete Carroll, but a great scenario for the franchise because then they're in control, right? You can go get your number 1 pick. You can go get that quarterback if you so choose. If Fernando Mendoza is your guy, you can go get him. If Dante Moore is your guy, you can go get him. But it's also great because you're in position to have options. Because you could be in a scenario where neither one of those guys are your guy. And you can have that pick and hold that pick and wait for a team that's desperate for a quarterback or really wants Mendoza or really wants more to trade up with you, and you can get a boatload of picks in return and really stack up. Then you have multiple picks in this upcoming draft. You'll have multiple first-round picks in the next upcoming draft. Like, you'll set yourself up for multiple years to have multiple first-round picks. You, in fact, could do that if you have the number 1 overall pick. You're literally in control of the draft. And that's a good thing for a team that obviously is void in talent, right? So you'll have many options. That is one scenario of having the number overall pick. Another scenario, and I actually spent some time at the Raiders facility on Tuesday talking about this. I don't know what's going to happen at the end of the season. A lot of us anticipate that Pete Carroll is going to be let go. That having that number 1 overall pick and all the salary cap space that they have, that can make this job that much more attractive to a potential head coach, to a potential offensive coordinator, right? They can all of a sudden say, hey, I'm going to Las Vegas. It's a great destination, beautiful stadium, beautiful facility. I got the opportunity to go handpick my quarterback, and I got plenty of salary cap space to kind of turn this team around and put it in my image of what I'm looking for. So that could be something, and let's just throw a name out there like Clint Kubiak. Say he's the OC in Seattle that is going to be the hot name this year. Maybe that's a guy that they're looking at and saying, hey, man, we'd like you to come here and be the head coach, and he's kind of on the fence. That could be what seals the deal. Hey, man, you got the first overall pick. You can handpick your quarterback. Whoever you think fits with what you want to do, go get him. And you got all this salary cap space. Go build the team the way that you want it, right? It's basically an open checkbook. You go ahead and make it happen. That might seal the deal, right? Or if you go and get a guy like Chris Shula, the defensive coordinator from the Rams, and he's trying to attract a really good offensive coordinator to come with him, that might be attractive to that OC, especially an OC that has thoughts of being a head coach sooner rather than later. Hey, if I go and get this handpicked quarterback, I coach him up and look really good with him, then all of a sudden I'm going to be more attractive to these other organizations as a potential head coach. So that's how that could work out if you go and get a defensive-minded head coach. I know a lot of people talk about just getting an offensive-minded head coach so you don't have to worry about replacing a hotshot OC if he ends up being a really good OC. And that, that's something that the Raiders may have to worry about if they do go in that direction. But first of all, find a guy that's going to help them win a bunch of games and then worry about that later, right? Because right now they haven't won consistently a lot of games in a very long time. So that's one side of the coin. That's if they lose out, that could be that could be the storyline going into the offseason. That could be the way that the NFL offseason is really shaped up in the Raiders' favor, right? To put them in the driver's seat, where they weren't able to land Ben Johnson last year because the Raiders didn't have a quarterback. They weren't in a position to go get the quarterback, and the Bears already had Caleb Williams, and he wanted to work with him. So this is the scenario where it's like, hey, you get your Ben Johnson potentially, and he can go get whatever quarterback he wants. That's if you end up with the number 1 overall pick and you end up in control of the draft. Now, the flip side of this, and what I've teased a couple times, why it might be motivating for Pete Carroll to win these games, because I know a lot of people are like, well, why in the world would Pete Carroll be trying so hard to win these games? I mentioned it before. You can go from the 1st overall pick to as low as the 7th overall pick. So say the Raiders win out and they end up with the number 7 overall pick. They might not be in position for Fernando Mendoza. They might not be in position for Dante Moore. And if they go get him anyway by any means necessary, which you can, you're trading up. And so now you're giving up a lot of capital to go get that quarterback. You still have the salary cap space, but now all of a sudden you're hamstringing yourself with less draft capital. So this could be a scenario where Pete Carroll says the only way I'm able to come back in 2026 is if I win out these games and put this team in a worse position to draft. You see what I'm saying? And again, this is a conversation that I was having at the facility on Tuesday, and it makes a lot of sense. He could look at it like, if I win these last 2 games and we end up with the number 7 overall pick, this job will not be as appealing to an incoming coach for those reasons that I just rolled out. And then he could feel like he's in a position he could sell to the team, hey, I can do it even with the number 7 overall pick. I just have to do it my way. You can't arrange the marriage this time. You can't give me an offensive coordinator and tell me make it work. You can't do this and tell me make it work. You have to let me pick the groceries. You have to let me hire the OC, hire my staff, and do it my way. And it would be one of those situations where I know a lot of Raider Nation would be disappointed. Because, again, getting that number 1 overall pick, you're in a position of power. If they end up with the number 7 overall pick, a lot of Raider Nation is going to look at it like, man, that was a wasted season. Not only did you not win anything, you didn't put yourself in position to make this organization better for the future. But, again, that could be the reason why Pete Carroll is so hell-bent on making sure that they win these games and make sure that the starters are still playing, not all the young dudes out there playing. The reason why Geno Smith is still out there playing and not a Kenny Pickett, not a Aiden O'Connell. The reason why you still see Max Crosby out there going full throttle. The reason you still see Ashton Genty going full throttle, because he's trying to win games. And again, I'm not saying that that's the exact reason why. I'm not saying that from a position of this is what someone's told me and I'm aware of that and that's the game plan. I'm just spitballing some ideas of why there could be motivation for Pete Carroll to make sure he wins these couple games. I said it before, even after the game on Sunday versus Houston. I don't think there's anything that Pete Carroll can do right now to change the mind of the decision makers. They probably already have in their head that they're either going to move on from him or they're not. Right? I don't think that you can win a meaningless game against the Giants or a meaningless game against the Chiefs, and all of a sudden it's like, yep, you know what? That's what we were looking for. Pete's going to stay. Right? And I don't think that they can lose those last 2 games and they'd be like, you know what, that was it. That's the final straw. We got to move on from them. But if they win those 2 games, they drop to the number 7 overall pick, they could have their feelers out. And I mentioned this on Tuesday's show. They can have their feelers out for a Kubiak, for a Shula or other that they are interested in bringing in. And that coach might tell them, or their agent, because that's who they're actually talking to, is their agent. It's like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. Right? That position is not really as appealing as it was a couple weeks ago when we thought you were going to get the number 1 overall pick. That could end up being how it all plays out. And I know that there's going to be a ton of Raider Nation that's going to be sour. It's going to be a ton of Raider Nation that's going to be calling in to the text line and phone line at 707-654-4693 and saying, there they go. There go the Raiders winning meaningless games again. But these coaches, 1, are trying to save their job, trying to make it less attractive for someone else. And 2, they don't care about the draft picks. They really don't, right? Unless they know for a fact that they're going to be back for the next handful of years. Like if they have a Gruden deal where he's signed through 10 years, then maybe it's different. But when you're a coach like Pete Carroll that only has a couple of years anyway, you're doing everything you can to hope that you're back next year. And if that means winning and putting them in a worse position to get their potential quarterback or first-round draft pick, they'll do it. And they'll do everything that they can. Lovie Smith did it with the Texans, right? And we just saw the Houston Texans. He did it with the Texans winning that last game of the year, and everybody was angry at Lovey. He got fired right after it, but everyone was angry because they went from the number 1 overall pick to the number 2 overall pick. They were all going to go and get Bryce Young. Now, they'll tell you right now, oh, we were always going to get C.J. Stroud. No, they weren't. They were going after Bryce Young. They were angry as all get out when he won that game and dropped in the number 2 overall, and it ended up being the best thing for him because C.J. Stroud ended up being a really good quarterback for them. He's still a really good quarterback for him, and Bryce Young is now starting to come around. So it ended up working out. So I guess that's the silver lining. If that, in fact, does happen and the Raiders win out the next 2 games, which is a strong possibility, I don't think the Giants or the Chiefs have any interest in winning another game this year. It still could end up working out one way or the other, by hook or by crook, like my guy Raider Fish in Berkeley likes to say. It could work out. It's just less than ideal, and you're not in a position of power. So a couple things to think about when you go into these final 2 games of the season. Week 17 versus G-Men, and Week 18 to close things out against the Kansas City Chiefs. What's on your mind? Your calls and texts will close out the show, 707-654-4693. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. We want to hear from you, 707-654-4693. Before we get to any of that, though, we do want to thank you for making the Locked On Raiders podcast your first listen of the day. It's awesome. We do appreciate that in a major way. Let's go ahead and start things off with a call from Heavy D from the 716. He's calling to talk about what needs to happen the last 2 weeks of the season, the G-Men and the Chiefs, Week 17 and Week 18. Here's Heavy D from the 716.
Hey, Q Raider Nation, this is your old friend Heavy D calling from the 716. Hey, folks, there's no shame in wanting to tank, needing to tank. We got to tank. I know players and coaches don't tank, but Spy Tech can try to tank. And he's got to order them that we got to try to tank. And the one way we can do that is to promote Cam Miller, say we want to take a look at him. If Geno Smith plays these last 2 games, we're going to win these last 2 games, and we're going to pick like 6th or 7th, and we're not going to get our quarterback, and we're going to be back in the same mess we've always been in. Cleveland's not going to be denied. If they don't have the first pick, they got extra picks. They're going to trade up and get it. So we have to tank. My DNA, my wiring, it's so hard to root against my team, but would you root against picking up Andrew Luck or Peyton Manning? I mean, these could be franchise-altering, meaningless wins. And Spy Tech needs to tell Pete Carroll, we're bringing up Cam Miller because we want to have a look, and you're playing all the rookies. I don't want to see any old dudes on the field. I want to see all rookies. Otherwise, we're going to win these 2 games. Remember when in 2018, Gruden won a meaningless game, the last game in Oakland, and he was running around high-fiving the crowd, and that took us down from 2 to 4. So this wasn't for a quarterback, but that played us from Nick Bosa to Cleveland Farrell. And I remember watching the jubilation and the joy on his face, and I thought, my man, you just played us out of a key player. There's no shame in wanting to tank, and I've never wanted to tank more in my life than I want to right now. Promote Cam Miller. Play all the rookies. Sit anybody with some talent that has a nick or a bump or a bruise, because I'm telling you, the Giants are trying to tank. I know players and coaches don't tank. Did you watch this last game? They ran the ball 15 out of their first 16 plays through 20-some minutes of the game, and they weren't successful. They scored 3 points with that. They were not trying to win. The Giants are going to come in and do everything they can to lose that game. So we got to play the youngsters. We need that first overall pick, or we're going to be back in this mess again next year. Raider Nation, have a great week.
It's the overweight lover, Heavy D. That's all I could ever think of, man. Shout out to Money Earning Mount Vernon, right? Heavy D. It's Heavy D and the boys. Man, rest in peace to Heavy D. But thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you and totally understand where you're coming from, my man. I can tell you that Cam Miller is not going to be the starting quarterback, right? As much as we might want to talk about it and we might want to say that, I got to see what the young guy can do. He ain't going to be the starting quarterback. For everything I said in segment number 2, he ain't going to be the starting quarterback, right? That's what I do know. These guys want to win. The players, the coaches, they all want to win. Coaches are trying to save their jobs, make the case for their job, possibly sabotage the draft pick and not put them in a good position to get one. Whatever the case may be, however they want it to work out, that's what they're going to try to do. But trying to put in Cam Miller just for the sake of, lose the next couple of games is not what they're trying to do at all. But thanks so much for the call. Definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Apple Valley Raider. It's a pretty lengthy one. It says, Yo, Q, This is the best plan moving forward. Keep PC and Geno. We owe him $18 million. He isn't the worst backup. Who cares if he likes it or not? Draft a quarterback and 2 offensive linemen back-to-back rounds. Start Geno if they like and bring the rookie in after week 8. Bottom line, it doesn't matter the head coach. No one is winning with this poor roster. What is most important for the team is unity. Oneness with the GM and head coach. Honestly, it doesn't matter what they do if they do not get at least 5 out of the 6, let's say, draft picks right. It's time to build, and I mean build for the long term, not next year, but more, it'll be a top 10 pick a game, and honestly, that's okay because we're totally depleted with depth and talent. If we do this, and then and only, then can we have long-term success. Hopefully by then we'll have a transition to our long-term coach, but no matter the case, if we don't have talent, a coach doesn't matter. Somehow they cannot get more first-round or second-round picks. That if somehow they can get more first, second, or third picks, that'd be good. Honestly, I can care less about a 5th and 6th. Those guys don't make the team anyway, at least percentage-wise. Very unlikely. Sorry for being long-winded. Have a good day and Merry Christmas, Apple Valley Raider. Well, I wouldn't say that 5th and 6th round picks don't make the squad. I know that it's easy to talk about first, second, and third round picks, but there's plenty of 4th, 5th, 6th round picks that make the squad and are big impact players. I mean, look, Max Crosby, 4th round pick. 5th round pick, Hunter Renfrow. 5th round pick, Richard Sherman, right? I mean, there's a 5th round pick, Nate Hobbs. I mean, those guys were all impactful players for the Raiders or in the league in general. I mean, there's plenty of 4th and 5th round picks. Matter of fact, the Hall of Fame has more lower round picks than they do first round picks, right? So, I mean, that's a reality of the NFL. Like, you don't know where you're going to find these gems, but you're going to find them, right? And these guys that can really ball out. And there's a lot of first round picks that are bust just because they're over-evaluated or not really evaluated correctly, whatever the case may be. So, again, I get what you're saying. The more draft capital they get, hopefully the better they're going to be. Caleb Rogers is a 3rd-round pick. He's a guy that looks like he's going to be a really good player. He's a guy I'm excited about on that offensive line moving forward. But we'll see what they do, right? And, it's very possible that you could bring Pete Carroll and Geno Smith back. I just don't know how Geno Smith would be as far as like a mentor to another quarterback. I don't think that's what he signed up for. I think that's the reason why the Raiders didn't draft a quarterback early in this past draft. That's just me. I could be wrong, but that's what I think. I know I said that to Robert Turbin, a longtime NFL running back, and he's like, nah, that's not the case. Okay. To me, that was the reason why they ignored the quarterback position until the 6th round. I just don't think that they wanted to put a quarterback behind Geno Smith because I don't think he wanted to hear the noise about put this guy in, whoever that quarterback is, whether it's Shador, Jackson Dart, Tyler Shuck, whoever it was. I don't think that they wanted to have that kind of pressure. They wanted to allow him to have his opportunity to own it and be his team, even though he didn't take advantage of that opportunity. And everyone still called for Kenny Pickett and still called for Aiden O'Connell. But thanks so much for the text. Definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Clayton from the 702. He's calling to talk about the last 2 games of the season and what he thinks the Raiders need to do with it. Here's Clayton from the 702.
All my Raiders. It's Clayton here from the 702. The tank is out of gas with 2 games left to go. If we play against the Giants and the Chiefs like we played against the Texans, we're going to win those games. And I think we should embrace it. It's been an awful season for sure, but I think we all deserve a couple wins to cap it off. We all deserve it. Fans, players, owners, media members. We could use a couple wins. I know that's an unpopular opinion, but remember the last time we picked number 1? And besides that, what's the motto? Just win, baby.
Big Clayton, thanks for the call. Appreciate you. And I can see a world where the Raiders win the final 2. Right. And, it's simple. Jackson Dart and the Giants, they don't look like they're interested in winning. The Chiefs are down to quarterback number 3. There's a reason why they play the game, but it sure doesn't feel like that they want to win. I can tell you that. So, you got to go with what you go with. If the Raiders win the next 2, like I said, they could easily drop to number 7 overall. They'll be anywhere between number 1 and number 7. That's what I know. Right. So you can guesstimate, figure out what you want to do. You can start putting your mock drafts together. All right. Well, if they pick at number 5, this is what it's going to do. This is what it's going to take to trade up. Right. Ideally, the Giants would love to get the number 1 overall pick and do everything that I said in segment number 2. Be in control of the draft and be able to trade back. They have their QB. So they want to trade back, probably not out of the top 5, but trade back, collect extra draft capital, build that team while another team has to, give them multiple picks to move up to that spot and go get their QB. So, there's a good chance that the Raiders do finish the season on a 2-game winning streak. And I know that nobody in Raider Nation is going to be fired up about that. We'll close things out with a text from Down South Raider. Down South, where I said, no, don't get me started on that, man. Last time, it took me 4 days. like 4 days to get over that. So I better not start that now. It'll be New Year's Eve, and it's Christmas Eve now. But in New Year's Eve, I'll be singing "Down South is where I stay." It's where it's long lane. Anyway, don't stop, Q. Just stop. Anyway, it says Q. Down South Raider here just wants to thank you for your continued steady coverage this season. It's been a tough one, but the show's a daily bright spot. Raider Nation appreciates you. Looking forward to the draft. I hope the Raiders have an eye on Braylon Braxton, a senior quarterback at Southern Miss, and at Marshall before that. Kid's a winner, has a big body, dual threat, but with a great deep ball. Perhaps most importantly, has all the leadership qualities the Raiders need right now. I know Mendoza's the big story, and rightfully so. More from Oregon is a sleeper, but Braxton is worth a closer look. Merry Christmas, Raider Nation. That's from Down South Raider. Really good text, man. Really good. And I'm going to have to do my homework. I'd be lying to you if I act like I had done my homework already on Braylon. I will definitely do my homework and get as much feedback for you on Braylon and see where, multiple people are talking about him and what they think of him. And that could be a heck of a steal right there. And maybe the Raiders could turn their attention to someone else early in the draft, depending on where they end up, anywhere between 1 and 7. But Braylon Braxton, senior quarterback at Southern Miss, okay, definitely take a look and pay attention to that. So thanks so much for the text. Definitely appreciate you. Great stuff on the text line and the phone line, as always, at 707-654-4693. Coming up tomorrow, we'll have the crossover edition. Patricia Traina and myself will talk about storylines. We'll talk about matchups and keys to victory, probably that neither team wants to get a victory. I know the G-men aren't interested in a victory, and on the Raiders, probably people upstairs probably aren't interested in a victory, but the people downstairs are interested in a victory for sure. So we'll do that on the crossover edition, on the Christmas Day edition. We'll close out the week really strong on Friday. I know it's the holiday time, and hopefully you get to enjoy some time with your family, but this show will be here each and every day like it always is. So whenever you get a chance to tune in, we do appreciate you in a major, major way. We'll also have the second Raider Squad show for the week with Chantel Chan and Lincoln Kennedy and myself. We'll actually have that Christmas morning, 7:30 a.m. Pacific time to 8:30 a.m. So a little bit of Raider programming for you in the next couple of days. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.